Welcome to the Khalsa Nama channel. We aim to uncover Sikh history and introduce you to a narrative you may have never heard before. This will be our first episode and is going to present the single most important change to the Sikh religion after the Guru period. What we take for granted today was once part of the imagination of a select few. Let's travel back in time to the Punjab in what most people would call the glory days of Sikh rule, during the period of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, where we would have seen Sikhi practice in a wildly different way to what we see today. Today we can walk into pretty much any Gurdwara anywhere in the world and attend a program where we would find pretty much the same symbolisms, ceremonies and customs in every Gurdwara, whether you are in Sydney, Southall or Srinagar. Let's say if you were attending a wedding in 1820, instead of the bridegroom going around the Guru Granth Sahib, they'd be going around a fire. There would have also been plentiful use of incense throughout any ceremony. There is now no importance given to any Brahmanical authority or order who had previously during this time been conducting the different birth, death and marriage ceremonies. The Guru Granth Sahib is given the absolute authority in contemporary practice. However, the Dasam Granth Sahib would have had a similar stature. Also, around the precincts of the prayer hall, including at Harimandir Sahib, you would have seen idols being placed. It's important to note that these would not have been contained within the prayer hall itself. We now only know of Khande Di Paul when it comes to Amrit, but back then, Charan Amrit, dipping a toe into the nectar to sanctify it, would have existed alongside Khande Di Paul, where Khande Di Paul would have been a lot less accessible. Outside the Gurdwara itself, the common villager had a very different interpretation of Sikhi to what was practiced in the cities. Sikhi in the villages was much more syncretic with popular rustic culture and traditions, and villagers often made pilgrimages to shrines and tombs, such as Sakhi Sarwar and Guggu Pir. Today, Sakhi Sarwar would now be considered as Muslim, but in the early 1800s, the syncretic forms of worship amongst folk culture attracted followers amongst all three religious traditions, Hindu, Sikh and Muslim, and these visits often had superstitious motivations and included desires to heal illnesses. Festivities in the rural tracts were integral to the life of the peasantry, and even pilgrimages to festivities on the banks of holy rivers at the times of certain solar eclipses were considered auspicious. Providence of these deities and saints would help provide good physical and psychological health, protecting the rural tract against malevolent forces. There would have also been considerable emphasis on the Guru lineages, including the Bedis from Guru Nanak's lineage and Sodhis from Guru Gobind Singh's lineage. The descendants of the Gurus would have been held in the highest regard alongside the Granths. Overall, a heavier focus was given to wider Indic mythological themes, such as gods and goddesses, and fairs were often held in honour of various deities. There was also a belief in magic and astrology. These differences can really be understood by going into the different sects that would have existed within the landscape in Punjab at the time. These included the Nirmalas, Udasi Sikhs, Sevapanthis and Nirankaris. The Khalsa was very much a sect in its own right and distinguished itself from other Sikhs who were colloquially called the Khalasas. Because the Khalsa had a varied and less rigid identity to the Khalsa, boundaries between Khalsa Sikhs and Hindus were limited. It's important to note that Hinduism as a socio-political entity had not really crystallized at the time. Hindu was used more as an anatonym to mean someone who wasn't a Muslim and practiced a native Indic tradition. This all seems quite unrecognizable to the mainstream Sikh form of practice today, which we all take for granted. How did this change take place? It's one of the biggest anthropological transformations to take place within modern India. The answer to this really lies within the Singh Sabha movement. You may notice lots of Gurdwaras, especially in the West, are named Sri Guru Singh Sabha. This was a socio-religious political reform movement which brought about great change among Sikh practices, and it very much brought about the modern Sikh identity. A Singh Sabha was very much like a modern-day society, with a committee and different members taking up different roles, such as a treasurer and general secretary. The two Singh Sabhas which attained the most prominence and stature in Punjab were the Singh Sabha Lahore and the Singh Sabha Amritsar. They both differed with each other, both in following and ideology. The Singh Sabha Lahore were largely of a middle-class demographic who obtained a westernised education, whilst the Amritsar Singh Sabha members were of the religious, aristocratic and elite classes of the pre-industrial and capitalist Punjabi society. The Singh Sabha Amritsar were more Sanatani in their outlook towards Sikhi. In other words, they felt that Sikh practice and scriptures should be interpreted more in context with wider Indic mythological themes and traditions. This also included infusion of traditional practices of folk religion and reverence given to the lineages of the Gurus. The Singh Sabha Lahore, however, having a more westernised outlook on religious identity and practice, placed a somewhat less of an emphasis on understanding the wider Sanatan universe. They were more radical and reformist in their outlook and placed a heavier focus on seeing the standardisation of Sikh identity. By 1900, there were around 120 of these Singh Sabhas set up in different locations across both the Punjab and the British Empire. it's important to examine the conditions which led to such a consequential period of reform. These can be summarized in 3 main points. Number 1, Christian missionaries. Number 2, religious reform movements. And number 3, changes to identity within the colonial apparatus. Number 1, Christian missionaries. As soon as the British took over the Punjab in 1849, there was a huge influx of Christian missionaries, with their aim being to proselytize Christianity to the natives. The flag of Christianity was planted in the precincts of Darbar Sahib itself, and one of the surrounding bungas was rented for preaching the gospel and distribution of Christian literature amongst Sikh pilgrims and visitors. There were a number of high-profile conversions. Maharaj Dalip Singh was taken to Britain and converted at a young age, and upper-class Sikh society had become so complacent that even the nephew of the Maharaja of Kapurthala, Harnam Singh, who was one of Jassa Singh Ahluwalia's descendants, converted too. Between 1881 to 1891, there was a 410% increase in Christianity in Punjab. This led to a very competitive religious landscape amongst different religious groups. As well as this, the educational institutions saw a considerable change. The most respected and elite form of education came to be via the schools owned by the church, which offered a Western Anglican education, which was perceived as being far superior standards to traditional forms of Indian education. Parents enrolled their children into these schools with the hope of having their child progressing towards a higher paid government job. There was a prominent mission school in Amritsar where 4 Sikh students had renounced Sikhi for Christianity in 1873. Nonetheless, many Sikhs still retained their religion, and these included many of the spearheads and founding fathers of the Lahore Singh Sabha. It's fair to say that those who were educated in these schools adopted a more westernized outlook of the world, and in some part began to view their own faith in a more Protestant lens, very different to what was the norm in rustic agricultural tradition. The British had a vision of proselytizing Christianity to the poorest portions of Punjabi society, in line with their belief that the meek shall inherit the earth. They converted many chamars and shudras, a social class considered to be low amongst Indian culture. They also set up hospitals and homes for lepers. In response to this, a Sikh educational conference was formed, where initiatives were made to appeal to the depressed classes, and they aimed at applying a more egalitarian and inclusive framework towards society, which they believed to be more in line with the original teachings of the Guru. Number 2, religious reform movements. The Singh Sabha movement did not come about in a vacuum, and nor was it the only socio-religious reform movement in India at the time. From a Sikh lens, a precursor to the Singh Sabha movements can very much be explained via the Nirankaris, which came to prominence in Punjab during a later period of Sikh rule. Nirankaris are now known to Sikhs as a heretical sect, as a result of the clash they had in 1978. However, the early Nirankari movement had many things in common with the modern Sikh identity. The Nirankaris were a movement founded by Baba Dayal Singh, and as their name suggests, they placed a heavy emphasis on the Nirankar, meaning the formless divine, and rejected ritual purifications, and were opposed to idolatry which they had seen creeping into Sikh practices. The Nirankari Sikhs gave the Guru Granth Sahib the central place in Sikh customs. While Sikhs, even during the times of the Gurus, would circambulate around the fire during marriage, the Nirankaris introduced a new practice of going around the Guru Granth Sahib instead. In 1861, a Nirankari leader visited Amritsar and asked permission to perform the new Nirankari marriage ceremony of going around the Guru Granth Sahib instead of the fire at the Golden Temple, but this was strongly rejected by the Sikh priestly class at the time. Nirankari Babas even went as far as disapproving the invocation to Bhagoti at the beginning of the Ardas, on the premise that the word Bhagoti was a reference either to the goddess Durga or the sword. They argued that the word Bhagoti should not be prefixed to Guru Nanak's name, since he believed and worshipped the Nirankar only. Given that the beginning of the Ardas is taken from Chandi Divar in Dasam Granth, the Nirankaris were less accepting of the material of the Dasam Granth, which could be taken to be more Sanatani in theme, which is more in line with the wider Indic mythology. The Nirankaris focused on the philosophy of Guru Nanak and Sikhi before the establishment of the Khalsa and the militarization of the faith. There are many who make the claim nowadays that the modern Sikh identity was only brought about as a result of the British, but as this example of the Nirankari show, these schools of Sikh thought also had some following during the Sikh Raj itself. It's worth mentioning, though, that they had a very minimal following at the time. Other Sikh reform movements and sects also gained prominence in the later years of the Sikh Raj, an important example being the Namdaris, but this is perhaps a topic for another video altogether. A Hindu equivalent of the Singh Sabha was the Aarya Samaj. It was established in Bombay 2 years after the Amritsar Singh Sabha by Swami Dayananda. Their goals were to preach a purified, monotheistic version of Hinduism, preaching against idolatry, rejecting the Puranas, going back to the original message of the Vedas. At first, the Aarya Samaj and the Singh Sabha movement were quite closely aligned, and many Sikh intellectuals, who would later go on to become the leaders of the Lahore Singh Sabha, were key members of the Samaj. Several young Sikhs joined the Aryas, seeing it in many of the same ideals that motivated members of the Singh Sabha. The two organisations appeared to be moving along parallel paths. The Punjab proved fertile ground for converts for the Aarya Samaj. Swami Dayananda wrote his text, the Satyarth Prakash, in Hindi in 1875. In this text, he had criticised Guru Nanak and had gone as far as calling him a rogue and as cunning and dishonest. He called the hymns of the Sikh scripture mithya, meaning falsehood, which were used to rob and cheat simple folk of their wealth. This later came to light when he started preaching in Punjab. However, he stated his views had evolved and changed over time, and that future renditions of his work would omit his offensive passages on the Gurus. However, in the end, nothing came to be done, in part due to the untimely passing away of the Swami. The second edition of the Prakash continued to publish the remarks, which the Sikhs regarded as highly offensive. The newspapers of the Aarya Samaj doubled down on the Swami's original remarks, and columned scathing opinion pieces on the Sikh Gurus and Sikhi. It should be said, however, that certain members of the Aarya Samaj still held Sikhi in high regard, and were apologetic to the Sikhs for the offence the Swami had caused, and so at the time many Sikhs still retained Aarya membership. The final straw for many Sikhs came on the 24th of November in 1888 at the 11th annual session of the Aarya Samaj held in Lahore. It was here where Pandit Gurudat and Pandit Lekharam delivered a speech with great hostility against the Sikhs, and also went off on a rant against the Sikh Gurus. This caused many Sikhs to sever ties with the Aarya Samaj. 3 young educated Sikhs departed the Samaj for the Lahore Singh Sabha and became one of their leading intellectuals and apologists. The Aarya Samajists had further tensions with Muslim reform movements at the time too, and this created an atmosphere of increasing religious communalism. Number 3. Changes to identity within the colonial apparatus. As mentioned before, the term Hindu was used quite loosely from the time of the ancient Persian Empire to the time of the Mughals to collectively define the broad beliefs and practices of those south of the River Indus. The British, looking at religious identities through a more Protestant lens, applied a more black and white approach to defining religious boundaries. For the British, there was a dimension of the religious, and then for everything else, the secular. The term Hinduism, to define a distinct religion, was actually coined by a British evangelical named Robert Cust in 1780, as he tried to grapple with this and make sense of these alien Indian traditions. At first, shortly after Punjab's annexation in the 1855 census, Sikhs were lumped in with Jains and Buddhists as Hindus. This was, however, with the exception of Punjab's 5 main districts, Amritsar, Lahore, Gurdaspur, Sialkot and Gujranwala. Though Richard Temple in his introduction to the census report clearly mentioned that it was regrettable that Sikhs weren't given a separate identity in the census. According to Harjot Oberoi, based on subsequent census results, which included the Sikh identity from 1849 to 1881, the British wrongly perceived a decline in Sikh population in Punjab. This was largely due to the fact that they only categorised Sikhs as those who appeared to maintain the 5 external symbols of the faith and those who abstained from tobacco. This excluded Nanakpanthi Sikhs and Udasi Sikhs, who may have been clean-shaven, for example. In 1931, the census officials had begun to realise what had been happening. They'd miscategorised many Sikhs of other sects to be Hindu. The effects of censuses on assessing religious populations created a culture which incentivised movements like the Singh Sabha Lahore, who wanted to do away with syncretic religious identities and wanted to see the standardization of a spectrum of Sikh practices into one common identity. The initial decline in Sikh census figures alarmed both the British and the Sikhs. For the British, they wanted to take responsibility in upholding the tradition of what they saw as Sikhs being a martial race, and hence only allowed Khalsa Sikhs to enlist in their army. And now we come to the triumph of the Tat Khalsa. In a climate of great competition and cultural transformation, Sikh intellectuals began to preach a new form of Sikh identity. Everything was now up for grabs. This encompassed all aspects which would make up the modern Sikh religion that we see today. This was, however, not without internal competition. The ideological rift between the Singh Sabha Amritsar and Singh Sabha Lahore was amplified at the Golden Temple, where a cushioned seat of Khem Singh Birdi, the 13th descendant of Guru Nanak Dev Ji and the founder of the Amritsar Singh Sabha, was removed from the Darbar Sahib by Gurmukh Singh, the leader of the Lahore Singh Sabha. Singh Sabha Lahore believed that no one should be at the same level of the Guru Granth. They despised the evils of lineage worship and the caste system. This was reflected in the different makeup of the two organisations, whilst the Lahore Singh Sabha recruited from all members of the Punjabi society, including the untouchable caste. The Amritsar Singh Sabha was largely made up of the aristocracy. Although they were a religious reform movement, the Amritsar Sabha rejected any fundamental restructuring of authority within the community. Khem Singh Birdi also wanted to change Amritsar Singh Sabha to be called the Sikh Sabha, to be inclusive of non-Khalsa opinions. Birdi saw the Sikh identity in a broader light, with the Khalsa being the leaders and defenders of the civilization, but the Sahajdaris also being an important part of this milieu. He also suggested that the term Monna, which is used to define Sikhs who cut their hair, was offensive, and that the term Sahajdari should be used instead. Since its inception, the Amritsar Singh Sabha seemed relatively dormant. There was much infighting amongst its leadership, and its older intellectuals appealed much less to those who had grown up with westernized education. The Amritsar Singh Sabha leadership was thus poorly equipped to adapt to a rapidly changing cultural landscape. This included issues pertaining to the role of women in society, caste dynamics, popular village traditions, conceptions of God, and superstitions in an Enlightenment age. By contrast, the Lahore Singh Sabha moved from strength to strength. Its leadership was fully aware of the potential of the print medium as a means of broadcasting their ideology and shaping and informing public opinion, especially amongst the growing literate classes. They raised 7,000 rupees to set up a Khalsa printing press in Lahore, and in 1883 the Khalsa Akhbar became the most important Sikh paper. During this period, print medium was fast becoming the best way of broadcasting ideas, much like how social media is today. Unlike the Amritsar Singh Sabha of Khem Singh Birdi, the Lahore Singh Sabha saw the importance of the supremacy of the Khalsa over all sects, and didn't believe that the Khalsa should merely exist alongside other Sikh sects. They felt that the only Sikh identity which would be idealized should be that of the Tat Khalsa, and that all Sikhs should aspire towards becoming Khalsa Sikhs. The Singh Sabha Lahore were also very tactical in how they engaged with the British Raj. Their newspapers' columns weren't overly critical of the Raj, and they had a symbiotic relationship with the British. The British liked the renormalization of Sikh valour, which they felt could be put towards good use for the empire, and they felt that the Lahore Singh Sabha did this best by bringing the Tat Khalsa identity back into prominence, while simultaneously not preaching a message which was anti-British. The British also feared the mobilisation of the Jat peasantry, and they felt that the pro-British loyalties of the Singh Sabha Lahore were a good means to disseminate a message which appealed to the rural Sikhs, which at the same time wasn't threatening to the British status quo. Jawahar Singh, the chief secretary of the Singh Sabha Lahore, stood up resolutely at the 3-day general annual meeting and exclaimed, "In case you're interested in knowing the true state of the Sikh religion, undertake a visit to the countryside. There you'll find how Sikh traditions are going amiss. Our first responsibility ought to be the reform and correction of folk Sikhism." The meeting ended with a very early form of the modern Nagar Kirtan through the streets of Lahore, and participants and spectators were able to participate in a theatrical display of Sikh symbolism and standards, which had been formalised by the Singh Sabha Lahore. Many more Sikh intellectuals from areas inside and outside of Lahore gathered to discuss ideas, goals and strategy of how best to shape Panthik discourse. Seeing the rapid success and efficiency of the Singh Sabha Lahore, it soon started attracting the sympathies of the traditional Punjabi elite too, and Maharaja Ripu Daman Singh of Nabha soon became a prominent patron for the movement. Given how drastic the cultural transformations were to become in the countryside, it caused significant backlash at first. "To hell with the Singh Sabha, who prohibit singing and dancing," was a common slogan of disgust amongst the Jat peasantry. Neki Pracharak committees and social reform committees sponsored by the Singh Sabhas were set up in many small towns and villages in Punjab to enforce the Singh Sabha discipline and ethics. They started putting an end to ear piercings for boys. The outward display of women's jewellery was discouraged, and they called for the banning of dancing girls and promiscuous songs and bullies, which were very common at weddings. Prominent Singh Sabha intellectual Gyani Dit Singh wrote a polemical piece condemning the visiting of Sakhi Sarwar and other non-Sikh shrines. The decades of feuding between the Singh Sabha and the Aarya Samaj culminated in a rapid decline of syncretism in Punjab, and people either identified as Hindu or Sikh, and hardly ever both. Another popular polemic called Hum Hindu Nahi by Khan Singh Nabha grew in popularity and laid the intellectual claims of a separate Sikh identity against encroaching Hindu assimilationists. A popular novel, Sundari, by Bhai Veer Singh, was also released. The novel really emphasised the equality and importance of women in the Sikh praxis. To conclude, earlier attempts were made at the standardisation of Sikh Rehat Maryada, which happened with the release of a book called Gurmat Prakas in 1915. Between 1884 and 1915, at least 24 manuals and scores of articles in newspapers were published on how Sikhs ought to arrange their life cycle rituals, including births, deaths and marriages. All of these ceremonies were redefined. All Sikhs were ordered to do the exact same rituals without any references to their traditional caste or Baradari traditions. For marriages, astrologers, Brahmins, dancing girls, Mirasis were all decreed as anti-Sikh. The previously unpopular tradition the Nirankaris had of circambulating around the Guru Granth Sahib during the marriage ceremony rapidly became the new norm with the rise of the Singh Sabha, and the Anand Marriage Act was formalised, which became the first Sikh ritual that was codified in the British Indian legal system. The 5Ks, which were previously not formally known as such, but were mostly listed in historical Khalsa Rehatname, now became of central importance in defining the boundaries of what made a true Sikh. Gurpurab dates were also formalised, which also sparked fierce debate about Guru Nanak's Gurpurab, with some arguing for Katak and others for Vesak. Members of the Lahore Singh Sabha lobbied for public holidays to mark these new Gurpurab dates. Festivals such as Diwali and Holi, which were seen to be Hindu, began to be shunned. In contemporary practice, much more recently in the 1990s, Diwali has now been completely redefined into Bandi Chhod Divas. All idols were removed from the precincts of the Golden Temple, and the decades after saw a mobilization of the Akali movement, which sought to rid gurdwaras in India of the traditional mahants, who would have practiced a form of Sikhi seen as corrupt by the Singh Sabha. This all led to the formalization of a Sikh political party, known as the Shiromani Akali Dal. Through many years of protest and agitation, they eventually took control of the gurdwaras of Punjab away from the mahants and brought about a centralized committee, the SGPC, to rule not only the gurdwaras but also the highest shrine of Sikh authority, the Akal Takht. Next time you go into a gurdwara with Singh Sabha as its name, I hope we've explained to you how it all came about and how different things were before. The real legacy of the Singh Sabha movement is that almost all gurdwaras, even gurdwaras which are not named Singh Sabha, have gone through the rigorous process of trying to uphold the standards defined by the Singh Sabha Lahore in the late 1800s. Most modern gurdwaras are only regarded as canonical by the Sangat if they're measured up to the post-Singh Sabha and SGPC standards as to what defines a true Sikh gurdwara. This is probably for another video, but most Sikh sects like the AKJ are in many ways a product of this movement. There's much less variation between Sikh sects now, and they all largely conform to the Singh Sabha norms. If they don't, they're regarded as heretical. The Singh Sabha's ideals of a true Sikh have now resulted in even masculine warrior symbols and initiations, including the taking of Amrit and the keeping of hair as being seen as a means to propel spirituality. The legacy of the Singh Sabha has instead led to seeing the truly spiritual Sikh as one who aspires to become a Keshdari. The taking of Amrit too is now regarded as the epitome of spirituality, instead of being seen as an initiation into a warrior ideal. The irony of this is that the Guru Granth Sahib, which the Singh Sabha has given the absolute predominance to in the way of Sikh life, puts little emphasis on these external symbols and rites of passage in defining a meaningful spiritual life. This has led to much confusion about the Khalsa Rehat and Maryada, which has hence been amplified onto all Sikhs after the victory of the Singh Sabha Lahore and the Tat Khalsa. The Khalsa Maryada is now seen as the only true Maryada for all Sikhs. We shall tackle these complex issues in future productions. Thank you for watching, and if you like this content, then please do like and subscribe and share the video. Most of the content from this video has come from the incredible scholarship by Harjot Oberoi, so please do read The Constructions of Religious Boundaries if you'd like to know more about this topic.